Here we go, class number 7 of the Anglers Avenue Salmon School. Today is Wednesday, February 21st. We got a little special Wednesday edition here. We ran out of time yesterday. We've been ultra busy packing orders as fast as we can for our online customers. We sure greatly appreciate all the business. You guys don't know how much we really do. It's really a positive thing for us to have the growth online that we've been having and have all the wonderful customers we have patronizing our business. Thank you very much. We realized that we made a snafu. Class 6 was intended to be offshore steelhead fishing, and Class 7 was intended to be lake trout, but we flipped them. Our marketing guru, Steve, was so jacked up to do Lake Trout 101 that we couldn't hold him back anymore. So we had to jump him in front of steelhead fishing. So today's Class 7 is going to be on fishing steelhead offshore. If you fish Lake Michigan, and I would assume if you fish Lake Ontario, and you want to get on the best bite in your local area, sometime throughout the season there's likely to be a stretch of time for a couple of weeks up to a month where fishing steelhead or rainbow trout, if you want to call them, offshore out in the deep water is going to be the best bite for you. One of the advantages of fishing steelhead is they generally are daytime biters. We call them banker's hours fish. 9 to 5 is usually the best time. You don't have to be out there at 4 in the morning. You don't have to stay out till 9 at night. That really is an advantage for guys that don't want to power out in the dark or don't want to get up real early in the morning. You can, if you got kids or older people that you're taking, and you don't want to be getting up at 2:30 in the morning to pack your coffee and your lunch, you can fish these fish all day long, which really is nice, and they bite the best sometimes 9-10 o'clock in the morning. When I say offshore, what I mean by that is, generally speaking, on Lake Michigan here, our rainbow trout fishing is best during the summer, anywhere from 5 to 10 miles out. Some guys that really enjoy going out away from everybody else will go even further than 10 miles and find success. But the great part about it is there isn't one area. When we have good steelhead fishing, there'll be boats that'll be 4, 5, 6 miles south of Sheboygan. There'll be boats that'll be 2, 3 miles north of Sheboygan. Of course, like anything else, they'll find pockets of fish, and one area might be a little bit better than the next, but the reality of it is everybody can catch a bunch of fish. So we'll go through some basic stuff here about fishing steelhead that you would want to know and you would want to have if you're going to do this. First and foremost, fishing steelhead to me is a lot like fishing brown trout in the sense that you do not need a lot of equipment. Again, you can get by with fishing with walleye type gear. Steelhead are going to be, generally speaking, up in the top 30 or so foot of the water column, so you can get away with using items like the slide diver, which is kind of a must-have for steelhead fishing. Again, because you're going to be fishing really close to the surface, top 30, top 20, top 10 foot of the water column. Having that advantage that we've talked about of being able to put a long lead behind the boat to your spoon on a slide diver is a absolute critical deal. They will just outproduce dipsies almost every trip, if not every trip. The only time I see dipsies being as productive as slide divers is maybe if there's a lot of chop, rough seas. And generally speaking, if you're a weekend fisherman or a fun fisherman, you're probably not going to go 6, 8, 10 miles out in the lake if it's rough. So the advantage is that you don't need a lot of equipment. Standard size planer boards like the Offshore OR12 work great. The type of setups that we run on the boards, you can use those nugget weights, as I call them, or those inline sinkers in 1/2 ounce, 3/4 ounce, 1 ounce, and those will work just fine. There's lots of charter guys and weekend fishermen that have lead core. They'll use 1 color, 2 color, 3 color, 5 color. Those are all great setups. We set those up almost every day all summer long for customers. They work great. The only downside to those is you kind of got to carry a lot of rods, because once you set up that rod with a 1 color, 3 color, whatever it is, that's what you're going to use it as for the duration of the time you have that line on that rod. So you really can't adjust the depth at all. That's what it is. But it's a deadly setup, and there's not a bunch of other things on it, no extra weights or anything like that, so it does make it a very clean and productive setup. But again, you got to carry a bunch of rods. So if you just want to have 6 planer board rods that you can use all the time in different scenarios, the inline weights would be what you would want here, in a 1/2 ounce, 3/4 ounce, 1 ounce, whatever it may be, size, with a spoon behind it, generally speaking. So normal setup might be 4 to 6 planer boards, depending on how many people you have on your boat, with those inline weights or lead core setups, and then maybe like a pair of slide divers, one on each side. And we really don't have too much production on downriggers in this type of fishing. You can catch some steelhead on downriggers 20, 30, 40 feet down in the water column with some spoons on there, but it's not really a typical deal. There's a lot of times I'll go out there even on charters and just to put a probe on my downrigger for speed and won't even use the downriggers. They're not very productive, especially if it's very calm. I mentioned a minute ago that we're going to be fishing spoons. Spoons are by far the most popular bait for steelhead. Once in a while we'll catch them on Dodger flies. You can catch them on plugs. Guys find that hard to believe, but it's true. The small size plugs definitely work, usually in shiny colors. You can also catch them on crankbaits. I know guys that run Rapalas, like jointed Rapalas, orange and gold, chartreuse and silver. You can catch them on those things. But day in and day out, spoons tend to work the best. There's many brands out there that will work. I picked 3 here at the store that we do real well on. There's more that we have that will work, but I did pick 3, and we'll go through those real quick. One of the ones that we sell primarily for steelhead that really works is kind of a special series that we have done for us, which we call it the Dingo series. And it's a spoon by Yek Lures, and they call it their zipper spoon. And if you look at the bottom of the spoon, you can see it's got some clickers on the bottom of it, kind of some rattles, and those clickers, as we call them, they call them dingles, will move around in the water as these spoons are trolled, and they create kind of a noise in the water that seems to really work well for steelhead. I've used these spoons a lot over the last 15 years. I've used them tried them for kings, I've used them for steelhead, brown trout, stuff like that, and steelhead seem to be the ones that react to these clickers the best. These are 2 fantastic steelhead colors. We have Fireball, which is probably our #1 seller. We sell that one in copper, silver, and gold. I like the gold and copper the best. And then here's just a standard double orange crush in this hand here on a gold blank. Both of these are just awesome spoons and will work really well for steelhead fishing. You can run these on any of the rods I mentioned, the downriggers or the dipsies or the slide divers or planer board rods. So that's a really good bait that a lot of guys probably don't have in their tackle box, again, because they're not regularly available everywhere. He does that series for us. I'm sure he does it for a few other stores, but I haven't seen him in a lot of their stores over the years. Probably our #1 seller in the 10 years or 9 years, whatever it is now, I think we've been open here at the store. I think we're on our 9th year, has been the Michigan Stinger, as far as when it comes for steelhead, for sure. And, it's hard to beat some of the standby colors, like the gold Steely Stomper. You're going to notice a lot of oranges in this stuff. It's a lot like colas. We do what we do well on orange. This one's a crushed UV Jaeger Bomb in gold. We're going to add probably one of our all-time best baits, another Anglers Avenue original that started here, that everybody has now, which is the Gold Inmate. And then this was a new one a couple years ago that's really taken off, which is the Orange Edge Blue UV on a gold blank. And I think one of the reasons that Michigan Stingers have been so good is they're almost like a flutter spoon. They're very lightweight. You control these at a variety of speeds, and they tend to work, in all kinds of conditions. We've had great success with these lures, the Michigan Stinger spoons, for steelhead fishing specifically. Obviously, we've already mentioned them in some of our other videos that we've done well with. But recently, in the last couple years, we've had another spoon really take off that started to work well for us, that I kind of got going here in town as something a little bit different, has just a tad bit different action, but a similar profile to the Stinger, and that's the Dreamweaver Super Slim. And that spoon really has taken off here at the store the past couple years. There's a Craig Steelhead color, obviously intended to catch steelhead. Here's a Magic Man, which has been really good. And then the Old Faithful, double orange crush in a Super Slim. They call it a Goldilocks. One of the things that I like about the Super Slim is it's a little heavier weighted spoon than the Stinger or even the Yak spoon. It's just a little thicker spoon, so it's a little heavier. And what I like about it is that I can put those on the planer boards, and because they're a little heavier, I get a little more depth out of them in comparison to the other spoons. So there's a little bit of a sink rate there because they're a little bit heavier profile. Also, they can really take a beating. They don't bend up or get messed up in the net when the steelhead are thrashing around in the net because they're a little heavier spoon, and they really do take a beating. All three of these brands work great. There is a couple of Moonshine RV spoons that I've done well with over the last couple of years. Agent Orange RV, Flounder Pounder RV, some of the ones that have orange in it have been good for me as well. So like I said, there's other brands. We catch tons of steelhead on Pro Spoons, which is made by Pro King. But these are three that I just wanted to grab and kind of talk about, show you some specific colors. I'm going to remind you that we are going to come out with our buyer's guide here pretty quick, kind of looking at a March 1st deadline. It's a little later than we do normally do it, but we've been waiting for a couple of our new custom stuff to come in, and I didn't want to release it until I had pictures and made sure I had everything lined up the way I wanted it. That's one of the things you guys know that I'm really specific about. I don't direct anybody to buy stuff that I'm not 100% sure is going to work for you. So be patient with our buyer's guide. It's going to come pretty quick here, and you guys will be excited about that. Let's talk speed a little bit as far as steelhead fishing goes. Steelhead are a lot like coho salmon. They like to chase their bait. So we really crank up the speed. Anywhere between 2.4 and 2.8 miles per hour, I would say, is my average speed. And again, that's at the lures, not speed over ground. You want to use I prefer a fish hawk temperature probe, or if you already have a sub-troll or depth radar, those other brands do work, and they'll give you what you need for information. But I do prefer the fish hawks. You don't have to deal with coated cable. So you're going to want to put your downrigger down in the area that you have these other rods. So if you're fishing most of your rods 15 to 20 foot down, don't put your downrigger down 50 foot and try to get a speed, because the issue you're going to run into is there might be a current difference there, and you might have a different reading at 50 foot than you do at 20 foot. So if you're going to fish that 10 to 30 foot area, put your probe in about the middle of that area around that 20 foot mark and see what you got for speed. 2.4 to 2.8 seems to be the regular for speed for me. There's days we do crank it up as fast as 3 miles an hour. The nice part about it too is steelhead are out in this vast offshore area. Like I said, you might find them one day out 5 miles, the next day 7 miles. So it is kind of an advantage to go a little faster than you normally would, because you can cover lots of water and find the fish. The other major tip I have for you guys is use your electronics for steelhead fishing more than you do otherwise. And what I mean by that is steelhead are on the move almost all the time. I very rarely find that you can go to a spot after day after day after day after day, an exact location or exact 1 mile radius and pound steelhead. Generally speaking, they can move a couple of miles a day. I've chartered a lot over the years, and I've had lots of occurrences where we went out in the morning and just pounded them, and went back out 2 or 3 hours later for an afternoon run and couldn't get bit, and ended up finding the fish a mile north or 2 miles north or 2 miles south or 1 mile east. So don't be afraid when you start your initial area, if you do not find the fish, to start making large circular paths around your area until you do find the fish again. And once you locate them, punch that in and work that area for the remainder of that time that you're out. And then don't get too caught up in what happened yesterday or this morning. Make big passes, circular passes, and try and relocate the fish. But I do use GPS coordinates, and I do use, that steelhead fishing is one of the few times I do punch a lot of spots in on Lake Michigan. I've always told people in seminars before, I've never been one that punches a lot of spots in, because I believe, the fish are going to be in a different location 3 days from now than they are 1 day from now. But when they're moving that much, punching it in and working that area while they're there definitely can help you guys if you're not familiar with that open water, deep water trolling. So this was Class 7. Don't forget to go on our website, www.anglersavenueproshop.com. We also got our Facebook page, which you guys are probably following. It's been crazy. We've been working our tails off here, getting orders out the door, getting product on the shelves, getting all this new stuff in stock. And I want to say one more time, thank you very much to all our great customers for following us. There's lots of other places out there to buy stuff, and we really do appreciate the business. We'll see you tomorrow with class number 8.